But let's start with a little baseball tonight. We only got a couple games. The Cardinals and the Cubs. Wrigley Field tonight. -110 both ways. It's a pick. And the total in that game at Wrigley is 9 -110 both ways. I think we're going to have a show bet here, Peach. Give the people what you got.
Ryan, this might be one of my favorite baseball bets I've had all week, and I hate to do it to you, but I love the Cardinals because Steven Matz is on the mound tonight for St. Louis. He is 0-7 this season.
Yeah, exactly.
On the road against Marcus Stroman and the Cubbies. Everybody knows what kind of year Stroman's having, and it's a pick'em. Explain that to me.
Okay.
How is this game a pick'em? Not only is it a pick'em, but the Cardinals were plus 100 earlier in the day. They were even money, so some money's coming in on the Cards. I love the Redbirds tonight. I hate going against you. I know how much you despise the St. Louis Cardinals.
Hate them.
But this game is just screaming Cardinals to me. So I like them, -110.
So that does scare me a little bit because it was -130 earlier this morning, all the way down to a pick right now at -110. And last time Stroman went against the Cardinals, it was rough, man.
It was in London, right?
They lost 7-5. Well, yeah, that was June 25th. Yeah,
that was
London
game.
Yeah, gave up 6 runs in that game. 3 of those were earned. But you know, you look at it, man, and I'm looking at the current lineup tonight. So the starting lineup against Stroman: 39 for 137, 6 dingers, 26 RBI. I think he bounces back. And then Matt's looking at the Cubs starting lineup tonight. Their lineup: 9 for 42, 2 homers, 4 RBI. I'm going to take a shot with the Cubs at home, and I'm going to fade Matt's. Let's go 0-8, and I'll take a shot with Stroman, who most likely is going to end up getting moved at the deadline, I'd assume. Came out, said that he would be open to going back to Chicago, even if they traded him away. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I do think he gets moved at the deadline. So I think we'll get a couple good quality starts before then. I'll take a shot with the Cubs tonight, -110.
I do. I think eventually. Look, there's a lot of time before now in week 1. They don't need Saquon to play in the preseason, so I don't think they're in any rush. They have about 2 months to try and get this thing figured out. I guess they have less than that, maybe like a month and a half. But we've talked about it. Saquon is so important to that offense. Yeah, you gave Daniel Jones all that money. You went out and got Waller. You got Jalen Hyatt in the draft. But the Giants go as Saquon goes. You see how bad they have been when he has been hurt. I understand Dable helped as a head coach, but, and, you know, not having Joe Judge there certainly was an upgrade.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, Saquon, as far as running back goes, I think you could argue that he's maybe the most important running back to any team in football, you know?
Yeah.
So they need him out there. They need him, and I think they know that. They just got to get a deal worked out. Look, I mean, if we learn anything from the Lamar Jackson negotiations, you know, these things take time. They're not, all of them aren't done in like a day or two. Some of them take time.
Yeah.
They're drawn out a little bit. So I do think it gets done, but I think that it might get cut close. It might like be the week before the season, 2 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, we talked about his comments last night, and I get it, man. Like, I get him wanting to get paid. I get every running back wanting to get paid, and this is probably going to be his last big deal because nobody wants to pay a running back really after they turn 25 years old now. I mean, the shelf life's like 2 to 3 years. Used to be like 28, 29 years old. Even Delvin Cook. Like, we look at Delvin Cook right now, like he's like 35 years old. He's not even 28 years old yet. But with Saquon, I mean, look at the depth chart behind him. You already brought up the wide receivers. It's Isaiah Hodgins, it's Darius Slayton, it's Paris Campbell, it's Sterling Shepard, who just can't stay healthy. When he can stay healthy, he's a solid player. You draft Jalen Wyatt, you have Robinson there. But the running back room, Matt Breida, Eric Gray, and Gary Brightwell are the backs behind Saquon. And this is a big year for Daniel Jones. You know, I know he got paid, and he had his breakout year, but the numbers weren't great. He just managed the offense, and I think that says more about Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka. Mike Kafka is a very underrated play caller, but Saquon's so important. Like, I get not wanting to pay him because he's played 1 full season since his rookie year, and he didn't really technically play the full season because he sat Week 18, but that was just because they were resting him for the playoffs.
Right.
But I agree, man. I think he's just as important as Derrick Henry is for Tennessee. Derrick Henry's led the league in rushing 3 of the last 4 years, rushing attempts. They're pretty much running him into the ground. We keep expecting him to go away. But with Saquon, if he could stay healthy, I don't think there's anybody more important just because I don't like the receiver room as much. I don't love the running backs behind him. And he was 3rd in the league in touches. He had 352. He was 5th in yards from scrimmage per game, 103. And he tied for 10th with 10 total touchdowns. He led all running backs in rate of snaps, 75% on the season. So I get him wanting to get paid because he's so important in the passing game, and he's their best player offensively. So I get it, man. I think they're going to have to come to terms because going into the season, you're coming off a playoff win last year. You have to build off of that, and it's a tough division. I think Dallas is actually going to be better, even though they lose Kellen Moore. I really like the Brandon Cooks pickup, and I actually just like them saying goodbye to Zeke because Zeke hasn't been the same back the last 3 years, and now Tony Pollard's going to get the right amount of touches. They're solid defensively. Dan Quinn is coaching for a head coaching job here the next couple of years. And, I like the quarterback enough. I like Jaden Delora. I mean, he had a pretty solid season, 23 touchdowns, 9 picks. Became the first Arizona quarterback to have back-to-back 400 passing yard games since, guess who did it in 2012? If you get this, I'll give you $500 right now. The last Arizona quarterback to go back-to-back 400-yard games, back-to-back weeks. 2012.
All right, yeah, it was before.
2 first names is your hint.
Yeah, it was before Khalil Tate. Oh, man, this
I don't think you're going to get it,
because
I don't think I would get it.
Is it the year they were really good, right? It was the year it had to be. And I don't remember who their quarterback was that year. Yeah, you're going to have to tell me.
Matt Scott.
Wouldn't have gotten that, yeah.
Matt Scott.
That is a good trivia question.
Yeah, he played with the Jags back in 2013 too.
Yeah.
People forget.
Is that when Rich Rob was there?
Yeah,
had to be.
So there's your Matt Scott reference for the night.
Shout out to Matt Scott.
They have Michael Wiley back at running back, averaged over 6 yards per carry, 349 receiving yards. But they lose Dorian Singer to USC. That's a huge loss. He had 4 100-yard receiving games last season. I can't do it with Arizona. I also went under on Arizona State. Now this one pains me a little bit. And I'll tell you why, because I love Kenny Dillingham, who's now the new head coach. I think that's a really solid hire. When we talk about Oregon, that's what concerns me a little bit for Bo Nix this season is losing Kenny Dillingham. But the reason I went under, there's a couple different reasons. The main one, Drew Pine's their starting quarterback. And you know how I feel about former Notre Dame quarterbacks. There's a reason he's no longer behind center there.
Yeah.
They lose their top running back. Wide receivers, Badgers back. He was their leading receiver. So that room's pretty solid. They have 3 transfers that are going to start on the offensive line. For me, that's a concern. And they lose their 1,000-yard rusher. So I downgrade them offensively. Defense, only 5 starters come back. They lose their top 4 tacklers. And in conference play last year, they just got absolutely smashed and gashed. 6 yards per play that they gave up. They have some solid defensive ends. Their secondary is the best in the Pac-12. Which is good because you're going to go against a lot of good quarterbacks this season. But the schedule is just brutal, especially on the back end. I like Dillingham, but I think it's going to take him a year to rebuild that thing at Arizona State. So I went under on Arizona and under on Arizona State this season at 5.5. I want to talk Washington football because I absolutely love Kalen DeBoer, the number 1 president of his fan club. But I do have a sweat going on, so it's 4-3 Orioles. All right, so Washington last year.
Yes.
I was surprised at how good they looked. Number 1
how can you not
in
be?
EPA per play. I love Kalen DeBoer. He's a football genius. Love watching this offense. I also think last season showed that Jimmy Lake was the worst coach in college football history. Jimmy Lake does not deserve a job. No. I would not want him coaching my high school
Is he
team.
coaching anywhere right now?
Let me actually look where Jimmy Lake is.
Yeah, I want to know if he's like a DC
because
somewhere.
this is going to drive me
Would
nuts.
you let him coach Nathan Horvat's 10U team?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Oh, my God, he is an assistant for the Rams right now.
Is he?
He's only 46 years old,
We got to bet some Rams overs. Well, we got to bet the opposing team total overs.
What could McVay possibly have seen to be like, we got to bring this guy in? Anyway, Michael Penix is back for his senior season, threw for a school record 4,641 yards last season, second in the entire country in passing yards. I do like his Heisman odds a little bit if he could stay healthy. Also, he learned, don't leave the pocket because at Indiana, every time he got hit or breathed on, he got hurt. Running backs, they lose their top back, but they bring back their second leading rusher in Cam Davis. I think I like Cameron Davis probably the best in this room. Not much drop-off. Also, they stole Dylan Johnson away from the SEC in the portal, too. So they'll be stacked at running back at Washington. Their top 5 wide receivers are back. I think this is, if not the best wide receiver room in the country, it's probably number 2. It's up there with USC. They have Jalen McMillan back. He had 79 receptions last year. I really like Rome Odumze, he's back. He set a school record last year, had 4 straight 100-yard receiving games. They're so good, Jalen Polk's their number 3, and he had over 600 receiving yards. So they're loaded at the skill position groups. O-line, only 2 starters are back, but they're really solid. The only concern I'd have with this whole offense, the interior of their offensive line. They lose their starting center, probably their biggest question mark. But you're looking at an offense last year that averaged over 39 points per game and 500 yards. So I don't think there's going to be that big of a drop-off. Although last season they faced an average schedule of defenses in the 80s. This year they bump up into the 50s. Schedule gets tougher this year. But as long as Penix stays healthy, I don't think the offense will be an issue. The defense had a really good spring game. They bring back 8 starters. I think their goals this year should be like top 50. Their defensive line is going to be the strength. 3 starters are back. ZTF is back. He had 7 sacks in 4 games back in 2020. Seems like it was like 50 years ago because he tore his Achilles. He's back this year. And Braylon Trice is back. He had 9 sacks last year. 2 linebackers are back. Their secondary loses Alex Cook and Jordan Perriman's gone, but they bring in Jabbar Muhammad from OK State in the transfer portal. Tougher schedule. So I think the only thing I would do, I didn't do anything with Washington. I was looking for the Penix Heisman odds for some reason off the board right now. They get Utah and USC, and last year they were awesome, but they had 3 close wins. This year, man.
Roll it.
Do you get
Roll
it?
it. Oh, Horvat.
Final?
It's a ball game.
4-3? Oh,
Unless
thank God.
they review it. I think that's it.
No.
Come on.
No.
Come on. You know how big of a
No.
win that is.
Oh.
Come on.
All right.
Woo! That's what I'm
right.
talking about.
Now, back
All right,
to...
I can focus now on
Exactly.
Horvat U.
Exactly.
Washington
All right.
Huskies.
Washington, that wide
Woo!
receiver room. Jalen McMillan, 79 grabs last year. Rome Odunze, school record, 4 straight 100 receiving yards. O-line, my only concern, offense is going to be fine. Defense, 9 starters are back. I can't wait to watch ZTF, as long as he's the same player before that Achilles injury. Obviously a devastating injury for a 19-year-old kid. And then Braylon Trice had 9 sacks last year. The reason I didn't go over on Washington or didn't play them to win the Pac-12 is the schedule. They bump up this year. You look at the opposing defenses. They also get Utah and USC. 3 close wins last year. Oregon, USC, Oregon State, Utah, all on the schedule. That's too tough. I love Kalen DeBoer. Love Michael Penix. I'm staying away from Washington this season. What about you?
It's tough, man. Penix was so good last year. How shocked were you with how good he was?
I was shocked he stayed healthy, but I mean, like pushing the ball down the field, the number 2 passer in the country. I was shocked with how good him and Bo Nix were. Also, like, kind of shows how weak Pac-12 defenses are, but it is what it is.
That too. You know, Washington is going to be an interesting team. I think they're actually one of the teams in the Pac-12 whose defense kind of matches their offense a little bit, right? Like when you think UCL or USC and how high-powered that offense is, no defense. UCLA, you worry about the defense a little bit. Washington, their defense can definitely give up points, but I would trust them more than some of the other teams in the conference.
Dude, USC, Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams,
Well,
USC.
they're going to start the season 6-0. That might be the easiest 6-game stretch to start a season that anybody has.
I mean, it comes down to, they're going to score over 40 points per game. They have 7 starters back on offense in Caleb Williams, right? I mean, even with their wide receiver room losing Jordan Addison, who was awesome, they bring back Mario Williams and Taj Washington. They also have Brendan Rice and Dorian Singer, who we talked about earlier in the transfer portal. But the defense was the problem last year. They lived and died with takeaways. And it's so hard to do that 2 years in a row. You know what I mean? Like, that defense was a mess.
Yes.
But it was just pick 6 and fumble recoveries. But I actually like Alex Grinch, man. And if you look at it, they were improved defensively. They went from being like the 110th defense in the league to like 70-something. So if they could take that next leap, and they do have 9 starters back on defense. Also, you look at the schedule, 2 of their tougher games, Notre Dame and Oregon, both on the road. I was talking about this, though, with Luke a couple hours ago. The thing that would scare me, like if I did anything with Caleb Williams, to be the first back-to-back Heisman winner since Archie Griffin did it, would be that the back end of their schedule is so tough. So like Notre Dame and Oregon on the road. Let's say Notre Dame's better than I expect. They lose that game, or let's say Oregon beats them. Then after that, it's like Utah, Cal, Washington, Oregon, and UCLA to close out the season. What if Caleb Williams just makes a business decision? What if they lose 2 games?
Yeah,
they're not going to the college football playoff.
That's a good point.
Maybe he just shuts it down.
That is a good point. The problem is that, again, they're going to start their season 6-0. San Jose State, Nevada, Stanford, first 3 weeks of the season all at home, 3-0. Then you go on the road to ASU, Colorado, 5-0. Arizona at home, 6-0. Then it gets interesting.
Yeah.
At Notre Dame, home against Utah, at Cal, and then you finish. Listen to their final 3 games of the season. Home against Washington, at Oregon, home against UCLA. Do you like that USC's schedule is so backloaded so that they can use kind of the first 6 weeks of the season to really gear up for the stretch run? Or do you hate the fact that their schedule is so backloaded that they really can't afford to lose any of those games because they won't have enough time to make it up, and they pretty much have to be perfect
Yeah.
each week because there's no let up in their schedule.
No, I hate that. I'd rather just get this
I
off the bat.
agree. So I don't like them to win the Pac-12. There's not enough margin for error, in my opinion. And
Who
I
would you
don't
go
like
with?
that it's that backloaded.
Who would you pick right now? I mean, USC plus 200, Oregon 3-1, Washington 375 plus 375, Utah 5-1, Oregon State 10-1. I think that's
Beavs. Give
Yeah.
me the Beavers
I like-
10-1. That's my pick.